Welcome. This video is part 3 of building a routing and switch essential network. We're going to be taking a look at configuring this small network here. In particular, this particular video is going to go over configuring OSPF for this routed environment. So in order to configure OSPF, we have to configure OSPF on all 3 routing devices, which is what we're going to do now. So we're going to start with router 1, and we're going to do router 2, router 3. You'll notice that we've started off with what we've already done is we've already configured all the variety of networks here. We've already configured all the IP addresses on all the routers. We've already set up the loopback interfaces, and we've already set up a trunk between router 1 and switch 1, and we've set up 3 sub-interfaces. So let's go ahead and get started with configuring OSPF. Let's go ahead and start with router 1. All right, so configuring router 1. Let's start with OSPF. All right, first off, we're going to assume that OSPF will use an OSPF process ID of 1. We're also going to give each of these routers a simple routing ID. Router 1 will be 1.1.1.1, and router 2 will be 2.2.2.2, and so forth. We're going to force the router ID rather than having OSPF select its own router ID. And we're also going to make sure that we advertise the network addresses using a mask in order to advertise only the networks that are connected. And we're also going to change the reference bandwidth for gigabit interface calculations. We're also going to be setting the serial interface bandwidth for OSPF to make sure that when it advertises these serial links, it advertises them as slower speeds. And we're also going to assign a metric cost on serial 000 to be cost is 7,500. So those are the things that we are required to do for this particular exercise. So let's go and open up router 1. And we're going to open up the command line interface, and we're going to go ahead and log on. And then we're going to go to enable mode. And there we go. So the first thing we need to do is go to configuration terminal. And we're going to turn on OSPF. Now, all we have to do is type router OSPF. And then we need to put in a process ID. Now, you can run multiple instances of OSPF, and each one of them will have a different process ID. The reason why we give it a process ID is so we can stop or kill the correct version of OSPF we have running. So in this case, I'm going to run router OSPF with a processor ID of 1. Okay. Now we're going to force the router ID to be something that we want it to be rather than have an auto select. To do that, we're going to type router ID, and then we're going to type the ID of the router that we want it to be. In this case, I'm going to use 1.1.1.1 as I already indicated. We're now ready to advertise our networks. So in order to do so, we have to do 2 things. Number 1, we have to know the network ID. And we need to use a mask bits in order to advertise only the portion that we want to advertise. So in this case, I'm going to advertise network 172.16.12.0. And basically, this is going to be, I'm moving this to the side here. This is going to be the 12.0 network here. And I'm going to specify 0.0. Oops. Oh, sorry about that. 0.0.0.3 is what you would want for this. And I'll say area 0 because these are all going to be in the same internal OSPF area. So I'm going to go ahead and type 172.16.12.0, 0.0.0.3, area 0, and hit enter. That's how you do that. It's pretty simple. I'll do the next one, net. And this is basically going to indicate which networks I want to advertise that are directly connected. So as long as the network is matched by this network command, that network will be advertised. So now I'm ready to type network 192.168.31.0. That will include the, if you'll remember, I have 3 links on my sub-interfaces here. Out G01, I have 3 sub-interfaces. So I'm going to go ahead and program each one of these in. Okay, so we're 192.168.31.0, 0.0.0.2 255. So that'll basically include any address or any interface that is in the 31.0 block. And I also want that to be area 0. Okay. We'll now do the next one. So remember we had a subinterface in the 33 network. So we're going to do network 192.168.33.0. And we've also got one in the management network, which was 192.168.99.0. That is also on area 0. There we go. That is how you advertise the directly connected networks via OSPF, is simply by putting those network commands with the appropriate mask. Okay, now we are going to do the, we're going to set our certain interfaces to passive. The reason why we set LAN interfaces to passive is we do not want OSPF necessarily participating out the LAN interfaces. So we're going to set them to passive mode. So what we do is we type passive interface G0/1.31 for the subinterface. And I made a mistake. It's passive hyphen interface, and it's G0/1.31. That is my subinterface. I'm going to repeat this again for 33, and I'll repeat it again for 99. So those are my 3 LAN interfaces. I do not want OSPF participating fully in the subinterfaces. Okay, the next command that we want to do is we want to set the serial interface to a specific bandwidth so that the OSPF routing process will use the correct calculation when calculating what the metric is for serial interfaces. To do so, you go to interface serial 0/0/0, and now we can type simply the bandwidth command, bandwidth, and we would type, in this case, 128. So that's how you type the bandwidth. This will be kilobits per second, by the way. Okay. We can also adjust the metric cost of an interface by typing the following command: IP OSPF cost 7500. And that's how you set the cost of the interface. When you're done with that and you exit out of these commands, you can type show IP OSPF interface brief, or show IP OSPF interface, sorry. And if you look in here, you will see where it's calculating the bandwidth and the speed of a particular interface. Let's take a look here. Notice that the cost here has been set to 7,500. So that's what we were looking for. Okay, there you go. That is configuring OSPF on router 1. All right, let's go ahead and configure the OSPF routing protocol on router 2. So let's go to the command line interface and let's log on. Once we've logged on, we'll go to config T, and we're now ready to program OSPF on router 2. First command is router OSPF, and I want process ID 1. You could have put 2, 3, doesn't matter. We're now going to set the router ID. In this case, router ID will be 2.2.2.2. Okay, and now we're going to advertise our directly connected networks. So I'll type network 172.16.12.0. And this is that small network in between the routers. So I only want it to be, I want to mask out, I'll put 0.0.0.3 in this case. And we're going to do area 0. Now I want to do my, okay. Now I'm going to do, and by the way, if you get a sysconsole message like this, it's just indicating that, in this case, it's indicating that there has been an advertisement from another router and it's gone ahead and made an adjacent connection to the other router. That just means that they're talking, so you're okay on that. So we're going to type the 172.16.12. No, I already did that one. we're going to do 16.23, which is the other serial connection. And same boat as that one. We'll put the mask as 0.0.0.3, area 0. There we go. And now we're going to do the loopback interface, which was 10.10.10.10. And because this isn't just an IP address, it's not a network, I'm going to do 0.0.0.0, which means all bits must match. And I'm going to type area 0. So it will advertise out that interface and advertise for that network. So there you go. So I'm going to advertise 10.10.10.10. Good. So we now have advertised our 3 interfaces with OSPF. I want to set the loopback interface to be passive. So to do so, I'll type passive interface LO0. Okay. And I'm going to now go to my serial port, interface serial 0/0/0. And here I want to set bandwidth to 128. I'm going to go ahead and go to my interface serial 0/0/1, and I will also set the bandwidth to be 128. There we go. And I'm going to adjust the cost of interface serial 0/0/0, and I'm going to set the IP OSPF cost to be 7,500. There we go. Whenever you set a cost, you want to make sure both routers are using the same cost to calculate on the interface. Since I have 2 routers connected to that serial network, I'm making them both use the same cost. That's pretty much how you configure router 2's OSPF. I'm going to exit out of this, and I'm going to type copy, run, start. All right, let's go ahead and configure router 3's OSPF process. I'm going to go ahead and open up router 3. And I'm going to choose command line, and I'm going to log on. Oops. Okay. I'll go to configure terminal mode. And now that I'm in there, I'm ready to configure OSPF on router 3. Pretty much it's the same process. I'm going to type router OSPF process ID 1. I'm going to give it a router ID. In this case, I wanted 3.3.3.3. Very good. And now you're going to type your networks in. So I'm going to do network 172.16.23.0. And there you go. And this will be on area 0. Now I'm ready to do all the networks connected. And notice I got that sysconsole message indicating that the adjacency of OSPF has been established. I'm now going to type in a command for all of the networks connected to my loopbacks. Now all of those are contiguous. If you'll notice that they are 4, 5, and 6. So 192.168.4, 5, and 6. So I can use my mask bits to advertise 4, 5, and 6. And so to do that, you would type 192.168.4.0, and in this case, you do the mask as 0.0.3.255. And in this case, you don't have to type all 3 of those networks out. You can simply do it that way. And I'll type area 0, and there we go. We've now advertised all 3 of those networks. I now want to set all of the loopback interfaces as passive. So I'm going to type passive interface loopback 4. And I'll do the same thing with 5 and the same thing with 6. So those are all now passive. I'm going to go to interface serial 0/0/1, and I want to set this one bandwidth to 128. And there we go. That's pretty much how you do that. Pretty easy to do. And then you simply exit out and copy, run, start. You're done. If you want to, you can verify some of this information by typing show IP OSPF neighbor, and you can see that I have a full configuration with my neighboring router, which is the 2.2.2 or router 2. You can also type show IP protocols, and you can see who's been marked as passive, What are my routing information sources? In this case, I'm getting it from 1, 2, and 3 as my routing IDs. You can see what my router ID is here, so you can see a lot of information on there. You can also do show IP route OSPF, and you can see all your routes being obtained by OSPF from the various routers. This means that OSPF is working, by the way, because I've got advertisements from all the routers, and that there you go. And you can also, I think, type show IP OSPF interface, and that'll show you all of the interfaces that are running OSPF and the statistics about them. And that's pretty much all you do. You can also do show run. Oops, show run. And if you scroll down, you can get to the, I passed it. I'll scroll up. You can see the OSPF configuration information that we typed in. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much.